Welcome to On the Way, a podcast about life. But not just any life, it's about life with Jesus. Why do people follow Jesus, and how do they get started? And what difference does following Jesus make in their lives? Before Christians had a name, they were known as people of the way, people who followed Jesus' teachings. People have been on the way for nearly 2,000 years now. During the podcast, we explore the ways that people become followers of Jesus and why, and what difference following Jesus makes in their lives. On the Way is produced by the Baptist Standard, a donor-supported provider of news, opinion, and resources for living like Jesus. I'm Eric Black, editor of the Baptist Standard. I'm glad you're with us today. During my interview with Jay, we experienced some network difficulties that resulted in some lag or some delay in the questions and responses during our conversation. Jay's story is an incredible story about the power of addiction, but also the power of hope. If you or someone you know is struggling with addiction, we want you to know there is hope and there is life beyond addiction. And we encourage you to reach out, to find help. There is absolutely no shame in seeking help, and don't give up. We're glad to have Jay Cox with us from Abilene, and as we've talked about, Jay, the podcast On the Way is about how you became a follower of Christ and what difference Christ makes in your life. So, Jay, I'm going to let you introduce yourself to our listeners, and then we'll get into the questions.
Okay, sounds good. Like you said, my name is Jay Cox. I'm out of Abilene, Texas here. I'm from a little town about an hour west of here, and I relocated here. It's about a year ago, year and a half, and I like it pretty well. Basically, my mom retired and moved over here. I had some health issues that I had to stay with her, so I was kind of a forced conversion to come over here, which I actually did end up liking it here in Abilene, though.
So you moved from a little town to Abilene, and that was a pretty big move for you.
Well, I mean, let me backtrack on that a little bit. I'm a recovering alcoholic and drug addict. Saturday made 2 years I've been sober. And so actually, I grew up in
All
a
right,
little
congratulations.
town. Thank you. I grew up in a little town, but I was actually homeless when I moved here. I was living on the streets in San Antonio. And I'd been there maybe about 6 months.
All right. So that was an even bigger change to go from where you were to San Antonio, to find yourself homeless, and then to come to Abilene.
Right, it definitely was. I mean, and people are hearing that thinking, "Oh my gosh, how could his family let him be homeless?" I mean, this is after like 20 years that basically my family just said enough. We're not doing it anymore, and you're on your own. And I had burned all my bridges, and I was definitely on my own. So I stayed in San Antonio, and I was living kind of in and out of the shelter, out of Salvation Army there. And but I actually got sober while I was homeless. I told myself, I said, look, I'm gonna try this for 6 months and see if I can do it on my own. If I can make it sober here, not living on the streets, I can make it sober through anything. And that's what started off my journey. My health began to deteriorate as I went on. Even though I was sober, I had a condition that basically, from the neuropathy, because I drank so much, it cut off the blood flow to my femur bones. And my femur bones and my hips both died, which they didn't know what was wrong at the time. I just slowly started getting to where I couldn't walk.
Wow.
And eventually, by the time I was here, ended up here moving with my mom, I was in a wheelchair. And the only reason she let me come back is because the minister at the Salvation Army called her. I'm calling on behalf of Jay, and we weren't really talking at the time. And he was like, I just want you to know he's in this situation. He's not going to be able to stay here anymore. But he said, I can vouch that your son has been sober for this time since I've known him. He said, as far as I know. And he said, I believe that he is. And so reluctantly, my mom let me come back here. And basically, I lost everything. I had like a couple of pairs of clothes, and that was it. And it was a really rough start, because I had to build everything from the ground up forward, pretty much.
We're going to take a sponsor break, and we'll be right back.
Since 1952, South Texas Children's Home Ministries has focused on healing hearts and sharing hope. Their 9 ministries focus on helping hurting children and families, all regardless of an individual's ability to pay. To find out more, visit www.stchm.org.
How did you get connected with this minister at the Salvation Army?
Through a rehab that I went to. They actually had a program there at that Salvation Army, but it's like it had steps to it. I went to this rehab in Kerrville, Texas. They had a little rehab there called Starlight. It's the oldest rehab in the state of Texas, and it's a really good place. Anyways, after I stayed there, I went to live when I got out of there at a halfway house in Kerrville, and then I ended up moving back with my mom, ended up relapsing, and then got kicked out, and then that's when they kind of cut ties with me. And basically, not that they didn't love me, they just had to love me from a distance, because I was very manipulative. And before I was always trying to kind of pick myself back up, dust myself off, get maybe a week or two of sobriety here, then I'll ease back into that lifestyle, and this time I'm gonna do it right. I'm gonna find a way to stay drunk every day and not lose anything, which is impossible.
Yeah.
So I ended up moving back here. Like I said, I couldn't walk, so I couldn't work. I didn't have any health insurance. Basically, I was just living out of the ER. And they're not gonna do an expensive MRI on you if you don't have health insurance and you're shut off the street. They're not. It's just the way things are. So I had to wait till I got health insurance and slowly started going to specialists until they figured out what was wrong with me. And I had my last surgery in November, which I had in October I had the left hip replaced. In November I had the right hip replaced. And then so after that, now this last period has just been about going to physical therapy because I hadn't walked in over a year. So my body was really contracted. So you think that sounds crazy, like you got to learn how to walk again. I always thought that sounded crazy, but you do. I mean, your whole gait, everything is.
Yeah, that's right.
So so I slowly started going to physical therapy. Right when I moved back here, I started going to church at Pioneer Baptist Church. I think it's the biggest Baptist church here in Abilene, and that's where you met me through our contact there. My pastor, John Witten, and he and the church have just been phenomenal since I moved back here. They'll take time to drop everything, speak to me if I need something, or help me in any way that they can. So it's been a real blessing. When I moved back here, I rededicated my life.
How'd you get connected to?
That was actually through my mom. She was going there. I actually wanted to go to a different church, but the services were the same time. So if I want to go to church, I had to go with my mom. That's just the way it was too. I didn't have a vehicle or nothing at the time. And I'm so glad it worked out that way because I visited that other church about 3 weeks ago, and they say it's a lot like my church. It is definitely not a lot like my church. It was different. So I'm just not bad different, just different than what I'm used to or what I see as praise and worship and stuff. I'm not judging them. It's just not my cup of tea that they had there. Anyway, so I started going to John's church and got to know him. I got baptized, rededicated my life, and then I've slowly just been working my way back since then. Just trying to. It's been, like I said, a little over 2 years. We're like 2 years and a week, but all the destruction that I've caused and everything, relationships and my finances and just spiritually, physically, everything was literally being rebuilt from the ground up.
That's a lot of work.
It's an extreme lot of work.
But you've been at it for 2 years now.
Right. When I first got here, I went to this place called the Betty Hardwick Center to get help. It's basically like kind of MHMR. I'm sure y'all have a program in Dallas like that. So the mental health part of, I guess you would say, the community. If you need volunteer services for that type of stuff, counseling, medications, or what have you. I started going there, and my social worker would take me to AA on Mondays and Wednesdays. And I wasn't a big fan of AA. I'm glad I took a lot of principles away from it that I still use to this day. And I'm not telling anybody else, hey, you shouldn't be going to AA. It just wasn't. I went for about 6 months, and then just my walk changed, and basically my church took over the spot that AA would. I had what they call it, AA, a sponsor. Basically, someone takes you through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and then once you complete that, then you're ready to take somebody else through the next steps. I didn't get through all 12 steps while I was going to AA.
But you said your church took the place of that.
Yeah, my church took the place of that pretty much.
How so?
Instead of having a sponsor, I have a deacon at church that I meet with, kind of like a spiritual advisor. You know, I have John. You know, I have another pastor, Nathan. So I had one group that replaced another group.
Okay. All right. And a little bit ago, you said you rededicated your life after you started going to Pioneer Drive. So at some point before that, you had given your life to Christ.
Yes. That was when I was 16 years old. I don't know if you're familiar with it, where in your neck of the woods, it's called the Walk to Emmaus.
Yes. Okay.
It's real
Yeah.
big around here, and I went to that. I think I was about 16 years old, and it changed my life both for the good and the bad at the time. I hated it because at that time I was already an alcoholic, and I really did
Okay.
feel like I got saved, but I was too young. I didn't have the experience. My family didn't have the experience to kind of guide me in the way I should go after I got saved. I don't say anything's their fault. It's just the way things were, and I slowly fell back into my old lifestyle. But I was miserable then because I knew there was something out there. I knew there was something better, but I just couldn't. I could not change. I didn't know how to change, or that I was doing anything wrong. You know, I was trying to manage my addiction with everyday life, and life was getting in the way. And so basically, yeah, I went on the walk to Emmaus, stayed involved with it for a little while, and then just kind of slowly veered off on my own, and eventually quit going to church, and just kind of backslid. And this 2 years ago, or about a year and a half ago, moving here is when I rededicated my life and started trying to reestablish that connection with God that I had lost. I don't want to say lost, but
What caused you to want to rededicate your life to Christ?
well, actually, it's the people of church. They were really happy, and they seemed to have something that I wanted but didn't have that they did. Now, the trick in that was finding a balance between church and recovery, and that's hard because not most people deal with that particular subject. Even though, and it's such a huge part of society. I mean, 95% of alcoholics and drug addicts die from their disease. 95%. And that's just any way you slice it. Those going to AA, those not going to AA, those going to church, those have family. The homeless guy you see sitting on the side of the road, he didn't start off that way.
Yeah, you didn't just wake up one morning and become an alcoholic or an addict.
No. And living on the streets is so hard, man. I mean, I had people come by, throw a cup of hot coffee on me, treat you despicable. Like you can't. It's hard to find a place to go to the bathroom because you have your backpack, and they don't want to let you in the store with the backpack because they're afraid you're stealing, which most people that I hung around with probably were. And you had to fight a lot. You had to find a place to hide at night. If you didn't, you had to make it into the Salvation Army for a certain time and on a certain number of beds. If you weren't there at that time, or they didn't have a bed, then or you didn't have the money to pay for it, $7 a day, then you're just kind of out of luck, and unless you have some friends or a group that you're working with, that you all help each other. If you're out alone by yourself, you're gonna get in a fight. You're gonna get jumped, and people are gonna rob you. And that's the way it is. And I got beat up a couple of different times.
So now that you're in Abilene and You're with your mom. You've had the surgeries.
Mm-hmm.
You've rededicated your life to Christ.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things that are moving for you, and there's some stabilizing things for you. I'm curious for myself. How are you at 2 years sobriety? So you've had all these things happen in your life over the last couple of years, and in the middle of all that, you're doing recovery also.
Right. Um,
Yeah.
Basically, like I said,
So how did you get to 2 years?
I'm still dealing with those issues. I mean, a lot of it's not like after I rededicated my life to Christ, things were great. It's that they weren't. I thought once I got sober that things would be a lot different in my life. They were different. I don't necessarily mean they were different for good at first off. If anything, things are a lot harder because you don't have that escape that you would normally have to where you didn't care about your feelings. You didn't care about what happened. But now you're having to deal with the wreckage of your past, and you just slowly start with your immediate family and then just kind of branch out from there. And it's a slow process all the way down to say, hey, somebody you stole $20 from 2 weeks, 2.5 years ago, making that right and going to that other person. And that's one of the principles I took from AA. It was just about cleaning up the wreckage of the past as long as they're not doing the other person harm. I mean, like I didn't do this case, but I'm just saying if, you were with some guy's wife and they're happily married now and they don't know about it, you don't have the right to go and say, hey, guess what I did to make yourself feel better? It doesn't work that way. So it's slowly cleaning up the wreckage of my past. Like I said, I thought once I got sober, things would be great, but they're not because I thought alcohol was more problem. It wasn't. It's just a symptom. I was still a liar, thief, manipulator, and all that stuff was still there. I just took away the alcohol. Now I'm just miserable. So it's dealing with those, and a lot of people don't make it because they relapse. They don't deal with those issues. And like I said, you have to find a way to deal with them. It's hard.
We're going to take a 60-second sponsor break, and we'll be right back. High Ground Advisors has a 90-year history of providing investment management and planned giving solutions to churches, faith-based organizations, and charitably minded individuals dedicated to transforming lives. High Ground is trusted by over 450 nonprofit clients, and we're one of them. High Ground has partnered with Baptist Standard for over 70 years by offering a comprehensive charitable giving and investment solutions model, which includes asset management, planned giving education and development, account support services, real estate and minerals management, and expert legal consultation. High Ground and the Baptist Standard share similar values, such as serving those who are called and dedicated to transforming lives and being a trusted caretaker of legacies. They also value good stewardship, helping those who desire to be good stewards of their financial resources to find creative giving solutions to fulfill that calling. They know what they do to protect, strengthen, and grow our mission is ultimately in service to the gospel. To learn more about how High Ground Advisors can partner with you or your organization, visit their website at highgroundadvisors.org. So earlier you mentioned that participating at Pioneer Drive has sort of taken the place, or has really taken the place of AA for you. And I'm curious about that and you rededicating your life, what those two things, what their role is in your recovery.
Well, I went to AA, your religious preference, not really your religious preference, but they call it a higher power, who, if you see that as Christ or what have you, who's something greater than yourself that's going to help you stay sober. And 99% of the people in there, they are Christians. And even the very few who aren't, usually they end up becoming Christians as their walk progresses. But it used to drive me nuts because it's like we didn't talk about Christ at meetings, and he was like this whole secretive deal. And I just told my sponsor one day in frustration, I said, why are we all just kind of edging around this subject because we don't want to, 99 of us are Christian and we don't want to offend this one guy over here. And he said, and it was a brilliant thing that he said. He said, you are mistaken the purpose of AA and the purpose of church and religion. One deals with life, the other one deals with souls. And that was pretty powerful.
So AA has its purpose and church has its purpose, and that's that was a pretty formative thing for you to hear. So talk to me about church's purpose for you, because it did eventually take the place of AA.
Yeah, one of the best, it taught me how to have positive relationships, how to have friends, which I never had before. I had tons of friends, or people, well, let me take that back. When I first got sober, I had tons of friends, people I drank with for 20 years, people I did know since kindergarten. And when I moved here, my mom's like, hey, when you quit drinking, her parents, my grandparents, are recovering alcoholics. They both died of cirrhosis. And she said when they got sober, their all their friends left them. And I said, well, that might have been true with your case, but not with mine, not with my friends. And it was overwhelmingly true. Out of a year that I was in a wheelchair, one came by and saw me. Not even, just say pick up the phone, not even come by and see me. That was zero. And then you get to thinking about, what, these people really weren't my friends. And then you start looking and you're like, the only thing we had in common was drinking and getting high. I don't even know what these other people stand for. Don't care.
Didn't have anything else in common, huh?
No.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, I was divorced. I was married for 10 years. I was divorced. But, somebody was talking about at church, people come and go in your life. There's seasons, as they call it. And I was thinking about it. And the pastor said, this wasn't John, but the pastor said, think of how many people were in or at your wedding that you no longer talk to. And me, that was all of them. So you just have things change in your life. You have seasons that you go through. Some friends are, some not. Sometimes you have those for a life long, and sometimes they're just there for, whatever purpose it was meant to have in your life for that moment in time. But, you grow up or you move on. It's not always a bad thing.
So the friendships or the relationships, let me back up from friendships, that's assuming something, but the relationships that you formed at Pioneer Drive, it sounds like they are different.
Oh yeah, very, very, when I was in the hospital, when I had my surgeries, or when I was at home, people I didn't even know from the church would come by the hospital to see me. Yeah, usually somebody every day. Even my pastor, who has, it's a huge church. He has a lot on his plate besides seeing me in the hospital, but they would come by. That meant a lot to me. It really did, especially when, I had my mother, but I didn't have any other people. Basically, I was new here, and the fact that these people came by and saw me and they act like they generally cared, it meant something to me. So that was kind of a foundation at, where I was talking about looking at somebody else's life and saying, hey, I'd like to have what that guy's got.
So the way they treated you, this was before you had rededicated your life when they were coming to the hospital, or was this after?
About the same time. No, I would say it was soon after, probably.
Okay. So the way that the people treated you at the church was something you hadn't experienced in quite a while, other than maybe your family, it sounds like.
Correct. Yeah, like I said, each relationship is different. For sure. Like we have in my church, we have a total of 7 pastors. And they each one of them's over ministries, one of them's over youth leadership. You have John that's over our contemporary, or our service we call the gathering. And then you have Brother Stan, the head pastor, and he's over the more traditional type church service. So we have a lot of people that play different roles. And I know all of them, and my relationship is different with all of them. And it's just, you would think, well, it's 7 pastors, you would think it would all be the same, but it's not. It's like 7 different friends.
Yeah. So 7 different friends. Say more about that.
Right. Well, I joke around with my friend Nathan, who's one of the pastors that I hang out with quite a bit. And he's been a real guiding light for me, And he and John are completely different. I can joke around with him. Not that John can't joke around. It's just we have a different type of relationship. Things that I might say to John, I'll say something to Nate. Like if I call him on a Wednesday, I'll say, hey, sorry to bother you on one of your 6 days off, because it's just, a joke and saying you don't work on Sundays. And he'll get it and laugh. If I say that to John, he's like, what are you talking about? No, I'm here. I'm at the office. And I'm like, no. I said, I'm sorry to bother you on one of your days off. And he's like, what? And nothing wrong with either of them. It's just the different strokes for different people. Everybody has personalities different, but each serves its purpose.
So one of the things that church is about is growing in Christ. That's why we have Bible studies and Sunday school and those kinds of things, what we call discipleship. And you said that you rededicated your life to Christ and that you've been forming these relationships, that the church itself has been really important for you. So in what ways has your involvement there at Pioneer Drive helped you to grow closer to Christ?
Well, one of the things that I always believed that I didn't have experience with then, I assumed all these people, they always went to church, were pastors, involved in the church, that they all had these great lives, that I'm supposed to, once I get to a certain level, then I can assimilate with them, but I'm not there yet. And that's further from the truth. There are people just like you and I are. Like I said, everybody's different. Everybody has their own struggles and their own crosses to bear. And so if you try to wait till you're good enough that you feel like you're measuring up to God, it's never going to happen, because it was not intended that way. And if we could all have this perfect walk with God, we wouldn't even need to go to church or develop friendships, because ours would be ultimately, the right way to go. But everybody's imperfect. Everybody has their own struggles. And it's about, I might be able to help somebody in one particular struggle with addiction or something like that you know nothing about. It doesn't mean you don't empathize with them, that you don't care. It's just, you just don't relate. And so everybody has their, like I said, their own niche, I guess that you would say, that they fall into.
Man, that's an incredible story. And I want to congratulate you on 2 years. I know how hard it is to get there. And I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
So I want to encourage you to keep going. And it sounds like you've got a great support network with Pioneer Drive, and you've got a plan that you're putting together. And so I wish you all success.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that a lot. It has been a hard road struggle, but I'm slowly coming out of it, and I can't wait to see what God has planned for me for my future. But I know it's something great. I do, and I'm just continue walking with Christ, prayer, reading my devotionals, and having group therapy actually at church. Not group therapy, but Sunday school. It's kind of like therapy. We go on a different topic and all kind of discuss it, and that's been a great tool as well that I've used. So anyways, I appreciate you all having me on the podcast.
Yeah, you bet. And Jay, I'm really glad that you're on the way with Christ.
Me too.
Just because a person follows Jesus doesn't mean that person is perfect. Following Jesus is a lifetime of growing more like Him. Likewise, while there are followers who are more mature than others, who have spent more time growing close to Jesus than other followers, there are no followers of Jesus who are better than others. If you aren't on the way with Jesus, we invite you to check out the Follow Jesus page on the Baptist Standard website at baptiststandard.com/Follow Jesus to learn more about becoming a follower of Him. If you are on the way with Jesus, we hope that this podcast has encouraged you to grow more like Him. The On the Way podcast is produced by the Baptist Standard, a donor-supported provider of news, opinion, and resources for living like Jesus. To make a donation, visit baptiststandard.com/donate. To receive the Baptist Standard weekly newsletter, visit baptiststandard.com and click on the subscribe button. You can help us reach more people with the On the Way podcast by sharing it and by leaving a review wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Eric Black, editor of the Baptist Standard, and I'm glad you've been with us today.